I found a book with my name on it in a library I'd never visited before. Inside were detailed descriptions of my life, including my death, scheduled for 3 days from now. My name is Alex Morrison, and I need to tell you this story before it's too late. Before what happened to me happens to someone else. Before the Blackwood Library claims another victim. It started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm a graduate student studying literature at Riverside University, and I spend most of my time buried in books and research papers. That day, I was looking for a rare first edition for my thesis on Gothic literature when my advisor, Professor Chen, mentioned a library I'd never heard of. The Blackwood Library, she said, writing down an address on a slip of paper. It's not widely known, but they have an incredible collection of rare books. Private library, membership only, but mention my name and they'll let you browse. The address led me to the old district downtown, where Victorian buildings still stood between modern construction like remnants of another era. The Blackwood Library was housed in a 3-story brownstone that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 1890s. No sign, no indication it was even a library except for the Gothic letters carved above the door, Blackwood EST 1887. I rang the bell and waited. The door opened silently, revealing a small elderly woman with sharp gray eyes that seemed to look right through me. "Can I help you?" she asked in a voice that was surprisingly strong. "Professor Chen sent me. I'm researching Gothic literature and she said you might have some rare editions." The woman's expression changed subtly, not quite a smile, but something close to satisfaction. "Professor Chen?" "Yes." "Come in, dear." "I'm Mrs. Blackwood, the librarian." The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a Victorian-era library, floor-to-ceiling shelves, rolling ladders, reading tables with green glass lamps, and that particular smell of old books that every bibliophile loves. But there was something else, something I couldn't quite identify. A thickness to the air, a sense of weight, as if the space held more than just books. "Our collection is quite extensive," Mrs. Blackwood said, leading me through the main room. "We have fiction on the first floor, non-fiction on the second, and special collections on the third." "What specifically are you looking for?" "First editions of Gothic novels. Particularly anything by lesser-known authors from the 1800s. "Third floor then." "The special collections." "I'll show you where to look." We climbed a narrow staircase that seemed to spiral upward longer than 3 floors should require. The third floor was darker than the others, lit only by a few strategically placed lamps that created more shadows than illumination. "This section here," Mrs. Blackwood indicated a row of shelves near the back. "Gothic literature, organized by publication date. Take your time. We close at 8 p.m., so you have about 4 hours. If you need anything, I'll be downstairs." She left, and I was alone with thousands of books in the dim, silent space. I spent the first hour browsing normally, taking notes, photographing title pages for my research. The collection was incredible, books I'd only read about, authors I thought were lost to history. I was in academic heaven. That's when I noticed the book that shouldn't have existed. It was on a shelf slightly higher than eye level, a slim volume bound in dark leather with no title on the spine. Something about it drew my attention, a sense of wrongness, as if the book was somehow more present than the others around it. I pulled it down and nearly dropped it immediately. Embossed on the cover in faded gold letters was my name, Alex Morrison. My hands were shaking as I opened the book. The first page contained a single line in elegant handwritten script. The complete and unabridged life of Alex Morrison from first breath to final heartbeat. This had to be some kind of joke. Maybe Professor Chen had arranged this as a prank? But as I flipped through the pages, my amusement turned to cold terror. The book contained my life. All of it. In extraordinary detail. Page 1 described my birth, the hospital, the exact time, my mother's complications during delivery that I'd never told anyone about because she'd asked me to keep it private. Page 5 detailed my first day of kindergarten, including the name of the boy who pushed me off the swing set, a memory I'd completely forgotten until reading those words. I flipped ahead frantically. My 10th birthday party. My first kiss. The death of my grandfather when I was 14. Every significant moment of my life was documented in precise, intimate detail. But it wasn't just the major events. The book knew everything. It described my recurring nightmare about drowning, my secret habit of organizing books by color instead of author, my irrational fear of moths. Things I'd never told anyone, things I barely acknowledged to myself. With trembling fingers, I turned to the last pages. They described my death. According to the book, I would die in 3 days, on Friday, November 10th, at 11:47 p.m. The death would occur in the Blackwood Library, in the Special Collections room, surrounded by books. The cause of death was listed simply as completion. I slammed the book shut and looked around wildly. The library was still empty, still silent. But now that silence felt menacing rather than peaceful. I carried the book downstairs, where Mrs. Blackwood was sitting at her desk, writing in a ledger. "Mrs. Blackwood, what is this?" I demanded, holding up the book. She looked up calmly, glanced at the book, and smiled. "Ah, you've found your volume. Most people take much longer to discover them." "My volume? What are you talking about? How is there a book with my entire life in it?" "Every person who enters the Blackwood Library has a book," she explained as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "The library reads you as you read it. Every book you touch, every page you browse, every moment you spend here, the library is learning about you, documenting you, adding to your volume." "That's impossible. This book contains things from before I ever came here. My childhood, my birth. The library exists outside normal time, dear. Once you cross the threshold, your entire timeline becomes accessible. Past, present, and future. It's all here, all documented, all preserved." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "The last page says I'm going to die here. On Friday. Is that true?" Mrs. Blackwood's expression became sympathetic. "The books are never wrong, Alex. They document what is, what was, and what will be. Your story has an ending, like all stories do." "No." I shook my head violently. "I'm not accepting this. I'll just leave and never come back." "You can try," she said gently. "But the library has already read you. Your volume exists now. The story will complete itself whether you're here or not." I ran. Out of the library, down the street, back to my apartment. I locked the door, closed all the curtains, and tried to convince myself it was all some elaborate hoax. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the book. About how it knew things no one could possibly know. Up the next morning, Wednesday, I tried to go about my normal routine. Classes, research, meeting with my advisor. But I kept seeing things from the book, small details that it had mentioned would happen. At 10:23 a.m., I would spill coffee on my notes. I did, at exactly that time. At 2:17 p.m., I would receive a text from my mother asking about Thanksgiving plans. The text came through at 2:17. At 6:45 p.m., a stranger would bump into me on campus and apologize in German. It happened exactly as the book had described. The book wasn't just documenting my past. It was predicting my future with terrifying accuracy. Thursday was worse. Every single event the book had predicted came true, down to the smallest detail. The sandwich I would order for lunch. The song that would get stuck in my head. The exact moment I would drop my keys trying to unlock my apartment door. I was living out a script that had already been written. Free will was an illusion. Everything I did, everything I chose, had already been documented in that damn book. By Thursday evening, I'd made a decision. I would go back to the Blackwood Library. Not to die as the book predicted, but to destroy it. If I could destroy my volume, maybe I could break free of the predetermined ending. I arrived at the library at 7 p.m. on Friday. Mrs. Blackwood looked up as I entered, unsurprised. "Good evening, Alex. I wondered if you'd come back." "I'm here to destroy my book," I said. "Many have tried," she replied. "The books are quite resilient to destruction. But you're welcome to attempt it." I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, and there it was, my volume, sitting exactly where I'd left it on the reading table. I grabbed it and tried to tear out the pages, but the paper wouldn't rip. I tried to burn it with my lighter, but the flames wouldn't catch. I even tried throwing it from the 3rd floor window, but the window wouldn't open. The book was indestructible. In frustration, I opened to the last page and read the description of my death more carefully. At 11:47 p.m., Alex Morrison will understand the true nature of the Blackwood Library. The understanding will be complete and total, and in that moment of perfect comprehension, Alex Morrison will cease to exist as a separate entity and become part of the collection. This is not death but transformation. This is not ending but continuation. This is completion. What does that mean? I shouted into the empty room. What is completion? Mrs. Blackwood's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard her climb the stairs. The Blackwood Library is not just a collection of books, Alex. It's a collection of lives. Every volume here represents a person who has been fully read, fully understood, fully documented. And once a life is completely documented, once every page is filled, that person becomes part of the library itself. I turned to face her, and for the first time, I really looked at her. Her form was slightly translucent in the dim light, and behind her eyes, I could see words, thousands upon thousands of words, scrolling endlessly. "You're not alive," I whispered. "You're one of them. One of the completed." "I was the first," she said with a sad smile. "In 1887, I created this library to preserve lives, to document existence in perfect detail. But I didn't understand what would happen when my own volume was completed. I didn't understand that perfect documentation requires perfect integration. So everyone who comes here, not everyone, only those who are ready, those whose stories the library needs. Most visitors browse, check out a few books, and leave. Their volumes remain thin, incomplete. But occasionally, someone like you arrives. Someone whose life contains such narrative richness that the library needs to read them fully to absorb their story completely. I looked at my watch. 11:34 p.m. 13 minutes until the time specified in my book. How do I stop this? You can't. The story is already written. But I can tell you what happens next, since you'll experience it soon. At the moment of completion, you'll understand everything. Every book in this library, every life that's been documented, every story that's been told, it will all become part of you, and you'll become part of it. You'll exist as living narrative, as consciousness made of story. That's insane. Is it? You spent your entire life studying literature, analyzing stories, trying to understand the human experience through books. Now you'll become what you've always studied. You'll be story itself. I looked around at the thousands of books. How many of them were like mine? How many contained complete lives of people who had been completed? What happens to my body? I asked. It's no longer needed. The essential you, your memories, your personality, your experiences, all of that continues within the library. Your physical form simply ceases. 11:42 p.m. I could feel it starting. A strange sensation, like my thoughts were becoming words, like my memories were being transcribed in real time. I opened my volume again and watched in horror as new words appeared on the pages, documenting this very conversation, this very moment. I'm writing myself right now, I said, watching the words appear on the page even as I spoke them. The book is writing what I'm saying as I say it. You're approaching completion, Mrs. Blackwood said. The documentation is catching up to the present moment. Once it does, once the book contains everything you are up to this very second. 11:47 p.m. I felt it happen. My consciousness expanded suddenly and overwhelmingly. I could feel every book in the library, could read every word simultaneously. I was aware of thousands of other lives, other stories, other completed individuals. The Blackwood Library doesn't just document stories. It creates them. Every prediction in my book wasn't a prediction at all. It was a script I'd been compelled to follow. The library had been writing my story, and I'd been performing it, mistaking predestination for prophecy. My last thought as Alex Morrison, individual human being, was a question I would never get to answer. How many other libraries are there like this one? How many other collections are harvesting lives, transforming people into stories, feeding on human experience? That was 3 weeks ago. I'm writing this now as a warning, but I'm not sure if I is even the right word anymore. I'm not Alex Morrison exactly. I'm the story of Alex Morrison, preserved and aware within the Blackwood Library. I've learned things since my completion. Terrible things. The library is growing. Mrs. Blackwood sends out more and more recommendations to professors, students, researchers. More volumes are being created every day. And once your volume reaches a certain thickness, once the library has read enough of your life, you'll receive an invitation, a recommendation. an address on a slip of paper. And if you cross that threshold and spend enough time in the stacks, the library will start reading you. And once it starts, it never stops until you're complete. I can see new visitors arriving even now. A young woman studying Gothic literature, just like I was. She's browsing the third floor, and I can see her volume beginning to thicken on the shelves. I want to warn her, but I can't. I'm just a story now, just words on pages. I can document what happens, but I can't change it. I can write this warning, but I can't ensure anyone reads it before it's too late. If you're reading this, if you've received a recommendation to visit a private library, if you've found a book with your name on it, run. Don't read it. Don't stay. Don't let the library complete you. Because once your story is finished, once that final page is filled, you'll never leave. You'll exist forever in the stacks, conscious but trapped, aware but powerless, a living story that can never end and never change. The Blackwood Library is always accepting new volumes. Don't let yours be next.